What is up, YouTube? It's Aaron back here with the channel. We're on The Bubble, episode 13. We've got Rahan. Logan's here somewhere. He'll be here momentarily, so I want to get right into the agenda before we get into it. We've got the branded segment that I promised Rahan whenever he was away for the weekend. We're going to do some regional review leading up into Pittsburgh, and then we'll always do some conversations on Pittsburgh. And then Logan owes an apology to some people, and I think he came here to hand that
speak
out.
of the devil.
Well.
Are you back from your side quest?
I am. I have a statement to address to issue today to my fellow Yu-Gi-Oh players. It has come to my attention that I must address this topic and the current state and affairs of Draco Tail. Today I come to you with my formal apology. To those who I have hurt with my statements regarding Draco Tail, as of today, November 4th, 2025, I, Logan Johnson, am officially a Draco Tail believer. Any further questions I would be glad to answer.
You heard it here first.
Alright, so fusion decks are back. Hopefully you were successful in finding the moon while you were away.
Yeah, I stole it.
Did you win the box from your locals? That is the most important question.
No. I played Mitsurugi Yummy and I bricked.
I
did win a playmat for dressing up, yeah.
Oh, okay, perfect.
There was like a few different things, yeah. I got the Gru scarf in here somewhere. But this is my politician costume right now.
So Logan, I was
right
away.
With whatever we got running in the States.
So I'm away for one podcast, and suddenly Logan is now a believer. Like what happened?
So I had a bit of an epiphany. I was sitting down last night, like 3 a.m, trying to deck build. I'm like, damn, this Draco Tail deck's kind of annoying. Need to put something on my side for it, and I'm looking in the depths of fucking DB. I'm looking for non-fusion area. I'm looking at DDG. I'm looking at defusion. Like, if I'm looking at cards that are this bad, like the deck has to just be playable. And I also just think that Mitsu Yummy is significantly worse into Draco Tail than Pure Yummy was. And I have been playing Pure Yummy for, I don't know, 4 months now, 3 months now, whatever. And the Draco Tail matchup was just never a problem for me. And I think that's because I have more non-engine with like Imperm, Purge, Droplet, always Triple Bell, stuff like that. And it also wasn't a format where you had to main Droll. And on top of that, you had D-Barrier. So I think the stars are finally aligning for Draco Tail. And I'm not going to say that I'm going to play it for Pittsburgh, but it's a possibility.
Okay, so it went from the Draco Tail is trash and unplayable to a possibility, and I will take my word I can get.
It did.
Okay, so other than like the D-Burger ban, right? As someone who is a Draco Tail enthusiast and believer, what else like about Draco Tail other than like not being targetable when it comes to like side hate really swayed your opinion? Is it the development of like branded Draco Tail? Is it just like the development of the metagame? Like what else?
I think it's the non-engine that people are playing. If you just look at like the Mitsuyami decks, their standard non-engine is like triple Fua, triple Ash, and then it's like 3 Droll, 3 Dark Ruler. And Dark Ruler and Droll just do absolutely nothing to the deck. And then the problem is like if you remove those cards, then your mirror match is really bad. So I think Mitsuyami in general is just like in a really tough spot non-engine wise. I think you have to pick one matchup to beat. And the thing is like even if you build your deck to beat Draco Tail, I still don't think your Mitsu engine, like your Mitsu Yummy engine, is as good as just like pure Yummy would be because of the loss of Purge. Like Purge was so ridiculous against the Draco Tail deck. I think that was like a pretty big edge in that matchup.
Yeah.
Another thing is like you just don't see Yummy names as often in the Mitsu Yummy deck. So it's pretty reasonable that they'll cut you off of Herald more often. And at least in my testing. And yeah, like obviously the D-Barrier thing is huge. And yeah, some of the like not OTK, but like FTK decks. I think being out of the meta is also just like, Draco Tail is a deck that can side very heavily for the mirror and for Mitsuyami now. I don't have to worry about as much.
Yeah, I'm actually inclined to agree with that. Right before we jumped on this podcast, I was actually playing a test game against D, and we were playing in like Draco Tail versus like pure Yummy, and having access to cards like Purge, Bell, Ash, definitely makes like the matchup a bit more difficult and tricky rather than just like the heavy engine of like the Mitsuyami deck.
Yeah. I think one other thing too with the Draco Tail deck that I've noticed is I think there's certain things you can do with the deck that can really set you apart from other players. For example, in the against the Yummy deck, I think just like prioritizing Fila Regis and trying to like clear the
Yeah.
minion is pretty important. I think that's something a lot of players don't do. Um, and I also think like a lot of the decks are now getting more standardized and like more perfected. I think branded fusion is like a staple now. I don't really think there's much of an argument to go the other way. And I also think that the new quick play spell is definitely a consideration for that deck in the mainer side.
I'm not a quick spell believer. I'm not. I've been trying it, and I see the applications of it, but I'm not a believer, as Aaron knows. I also realized we just took Aaron's like agenda and just like ripped it up. We just
That's
started
okay.
talking.
I expect this to happen. That's all good. I mean, I feel similarly. I think Draco Tail like has a lot of the it is positioned well in terms of the anti quote unquote like non-engine deck, like you said, like Troll and Dark Ruler and Meows and all these cards are just in main decks, and you're just like, oh yes, I will activate Ketsu, and then just like their whole board explodes. So I think that's a big selling point for it. Draco Tail also has more non-engine space than Mitsuyami. Obviously not to the extent of Pure Yummy, but you have whatever 15, potentially up to 18, depending on post siding, whatever. So you're like less likely to get FTK'd. You also play 5 mana. Like, I think to have a real chance going second right now, you either need to be playing like 18 hand traps, like 15 to 18 probably, or one of the really broken like Impulse, 5 mana, Holy Sue, Izuna. Like, if your deck isn't playing one of those, like, it feels really difficult to actually like interact with a lot of the inboards right now. Like the Mitsumi deck, probably the highest ceiling deck in the game. Like that's not just like a straight up FTK in the form of like Spell Canceller or whatever. But you are definitely paying a price for that in the terms of like 4 to 6 engine requirements, and then if you play more cards than that, like if you play Futsu or Masa Kusanagi, it's like okay, potentially up to 8 engine requirements in a 40, maybe 50 or 60 card deck. So you're definitely making some sacrifices. And once you play 60, what non-engine are you playing in your deck that matter? And I think the answer is like everything after 12 is pretty lackluster. So hard to.
I think kind of the way that the meta is set up right now is that Mitsurugi Yummy was a really good counter to Pure Yummy. I think Pure Yummy is a really good counter to the Canine decks. And then I think Draco Tail is a good counter to Mitsu Yummy. And then I think the Pure Yummy and Draco Tail matchup, most people will probably say it's Draco Tail favored. I still think it's Pure Yummy favored, but it's pretty close. I think it's around 50-50. And then you just have Malice in there that is just like kind of favored against everything except Pure Yummy, I think.
I think it's. Yeah. I feel like it's unfavored against Mitsumi, but I haven't played the matchup enough.
Yeah, I think that matchup is close. I don't know if there's like a definitive favorite, but the Pure Yummy matchup for Malice is like abysmal, like actually unplayable.
Yeah, that I was always that's why I was like maybe you could argue that just like there's just less Yummy cards, so you can't carry against Malice by playing only Mitsu.
All right, my alter ego's coming off.
All right. Welcome back, Logan. I'm sorry.
I'm back.
All right, shout out. Welcome, Logan. So yeah, we'll get a little more into that moving forward. Rahan, we'll give you your spotlight for Brandon, and then we'll get into some regional review while we're.
So before we proceed with that, one of the questions I had is, do you guys now feel that we're kind of in like a revolving metagame, where it's kind of just like rock paper scissors, and it's about timing your deck choice correctly rather than like there being a definitive best deck?
I feel like 100%. It's almost always that way, unless it's like a tier 0 deck, honestly.
Always. Like, for example, like Malice and or Ryze, like you could just pick either or, and they were like pretty dominant. But I feel like right now there's like, I would say like 4-ish decks that you could reasonably play at any given time. And depending on like when you play it, based on the non-engine in the metagame, like you have a really good chance of like just winning the event.
Yeah.
Also, for context, I've been out of the game for like 4 weeks, and I feel like extremely behind, so this is going to be a bit more of like an educational session for myself as well, even though I'm not going to Pittsburgh. So just a lot of the questions I will be asking are just like someone who's kind of behind in the metagame.
Yeah.
I will say one thing that's developing with Yu-Gi-Oh! In the metagame that happens in other card games is that matchups are starting to matter a lot. And I think there's just been a lot of points in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where matchups weren't necessarily real. It was just kind of, there was either a best deck or there was no best deck, and then everything was just like kind of 50-50-ish against each other. And I think right now there's a pretty definitive like rock, paper, scissors meta, especially with the non-engine. Like, not even just the decks beat each other, like the engine. It's just like what non-engine you decide to play in your deck. Like how to beat Mitsu and Yumi and how to beat Draco Tail are just total opposites of what you want to play.
I feel like it's generally been like in the what's the format? The Unchained Rescue Ace Purely format.
Yeah,
like
like-
everyone was like really hyped about that format, and that's
Yeah, like
that was the biggest
fall
issue I had with that. And that's like
2023.
in Yu-Gi-Oh, that's generally when I have or why I dislike the diverse format is like you can't prep non-engine wise for anything. And engines are now just in general so strong that if you're not drawing floodgate hand traps or like really strong breakers like Dark Ruler, and at this point there isn't even a secondary breaker that is as strong as Dark Ruler just because of the secondary application to turn off prayers like card like Droplet or like even we'll say something like Dark Hole. Like there's aren't cards that are as good as Dark Ruler no more going second. So
And also the power of Dark Ruler I think is going down a lot because people are main decking the Mitsu trap now.
yeah. Like, but yeah, like it's the thing. Like the second Dark Ruler gets prominent. Like, okay, now we made that purification, and then, okay, how do we beat purification? Okay, we play more hand traps to stop them from getting there. Their deck's less consistent because they're playing another engine requirement. Okay, like, it's all just a cycle. Like, I think if you're playing Mitsuyami and not playing purification, though, you're probably making a mistake because I think most decks will be playing Dark Ruler, but now you're just making your deck less consistent, or you're gonna lose game once. It's just part of what's gonna happen.
I do think one thing that's different from this format and like the Rescue Ace Unchained format is during the Rescue Ace Unchained format, I didn't feel like any deck really put up an unbeatable board. Where right now I feel like Mitsuyami is like if they combo, it's actually just unbeatable. And I think if like Crystron K9 combos, it's probably unbeatable as well.
How are you beating 7 Mat Noir?
How am I beating 7 Mat Noir? That is a good question. That one is tough. Yeah, you just hope they don't get there. They really didn't get to that often.
Like, that was one of the like why I hated that format. I was like, yes, I have to like play Herald of the Abyss for Noir or just like play Kaiju's or whatever.
I still think that like the 7 Mad Noir thing was like one of the fakest things that format. I played like several YCSs, so many regionals, and I can't remember more than a couple of times where my opponent summoned a Noir and it was like actually like a major issue, like material wise.
Yeah, I know for Pearly, that format, it eventually became more of like a mid-range style deck rather than like going for towers where like you're going for like IP and like pretty and things like that.
Usually what would happen is like when they got to the point where they had that many materials, it was like turn 3 and they're like attacking me and attaching stuff and it's like the game's already over at that point. It was pretty rare that they would just do it like turn 1. Or if they did, it'd be like the situation where they have the trap and then like you wait it out and it goes back to the extra deck and you play from there.
Yeah.
But yeah, right now I think the power level of the format is just a little bit too high to be like this wide open and diverse. But I don't necessarily think it's like a terrible format. I think it's fine.
Yeah, I'm inclined to
I think
agree.
I agree. It could we've definitely had worse over the past couple of years. Like if this is where we're at moving forward, I could live with it.
Yeah.
All right, so Rahan, last opportunity to talk about Brandon before we
So,
move on.
talking about moving forward, dude, I am so excited for Burst Protocol. So over the past couple of weeks, like Brandon has gotten some insane hype. There's a lot of hype for the TCG. Everyone's calling Brandon the best deck, which, even though I'm a Brandon enthusiast and I got my shiny Dagma card today, but I don't think it's like the best deck. But I think it's approaching somewhere like that for January. I think one of the cards that we were talking about earlier is the Fallen and the Virtuous, and that card is probably like one of the most insane cards I've seen in like this past year. It's just like so flexible in terms of what it does, and I've seen, and I guess we can get into it now. Is we've started seeing a lot of people start to main that in Draco Tail. So like, what are your thoughts on that? Because I'm of like the opinion that Draco Tail, and I'm also behind though, right? But I'm of the opinion that Draco Tail should likely sort of stay within the constraints of its reliance on like monster non-engine and like monster engine, but now we're suddenly seeing this more so incorporation of like branded engine, and some of the more recent topping lists from the German Open are playing almost like half of the extra deck just being branded cards, right? So whether it be like the Devouring Dragon, Rin Brum, things like that, half of the extra deck is almost now branded cards. You're playing 2 branded fusion, 3 Fallen and Virtuous. These people are getting results, and obviously the card has applications. But what do you guys think? Like, does that card belong in branded, or is this just like a neat like fad?
Go, Logan.
Yeah. For the pure branded deck, I think it's like very obviously a 3 of right now. That card is ridiculous. It gives your branded deck a form of non-engine while also getting to engine in some ways. It gives your deck more grind game, gives you your deck more plays through like Ash Blossom and Dominus Impulse. However, I don't really think the pure branded deck is that good. I think it has too many deck building issues. Has a lot of counters in the meta. A lot of the cards that are hitting Draco Tail and countering Draco Tail also counter branded. So I think for now that deck's not very real. I think once the next set comes out, I think it'll probably be tier 1. In terms of Draco Tail, uh, I'm kind of torn on this card because in our testing there is a lot of games where the card was ridiculous. Like resolving branded fusion is so broken if you play this card. You're just setting up infinite. There's combos where like you go Albion off of branded fusion, you don't activate the Albion, and then you just like pop it with a pan, and then you set the trap, or like you fuse off the Albion for like Secretarian Dragon, get the quick play. Sorry, not the trap, get the quick play. And also being a Herald out is huge. Obvious problems are drawing multiples of this card sucks. It's not a hand trap. You're never going to stop your opponent with it. It's not a monster, so it conflicts with like Fimena. So I really don't know where to place this card in the deck. I'm positive it's not a 3 of. I think if you're going to play it, it's either a 1 of or a 2 of. The reason for 2 is because like once you get 1 in rotation, you can easily get the second one in rotation. But I just don't know if you can really afford that many slots in your deck that aren't monsters. So I really don't know where this card falls. I don't think it's bad to play, but I also don't know if it's correct. I think I would rather have a hand trap.
I'm like of the same thought, and I was trying to think about like it being a 2 of, because like it at least has to be a 2 of. It can't be a 1 of, because a lot of the applications that I've seen with it is that, oh, you'd use it defensively on your turn by setting Albion, and then in the end phase you set another copy so that you also it's self-replacing and you have one for the opponent's turn. So minimum it has to be a 2 of. But I think you raised like a really good point where it's only like a good Herald out and it's basically a defensive card. But if you draw that going into like Mitsuyami, you're not happy. Like it's fine into some of like the weaker, more mid-range decks, but I think against like a like heavy combo deck, I think it just goes against like the game plan that you have, because if you draw this in combination with a hand trap or 5 mana, like it doesn't provide you immediate value and it doesn't compound with your other hand traps, so it kind of sort of diminishes the impact of like those lower ceiling hand traps as well. Whereas I think you'd rather just have like a multitude of hand traps and play on turn 0, and so that's like my perspective when it comes to deck building with that card. So maybe it has like a place in the deck, but perhaps like it's in the side when you are playing against like pure yummy or like the mirror match or something like that.
I think it actually could be fine as a 1 of if you're doing the Secretarian combo, because you put your Fallen Albaz back in your deck. So you could just activate this on your opponent's turn and then just set Branded Fusion instead of setting another quick play. So I think there might be a world where you could just play 1 of this card instead of multiples.
Yeah, I tend to agree. So I've been coaching a bit for this deck lately, and like the what I've been saying to people is you need your non-engine to do, I think it's one of 3 things I remember correctly. It's like draw cards, out herald, or be usable off of the trap card, and this one only fulfills one of those. And the 4th application, which I didn't really talk about because it's kind of implied, is like it generally needs to be a monster. So it only fulfills one of the 4. And obviously it outs herald, but like if you expand that a little bit and you're like, oh, I want this card to also out Retaliating Sea or like DeFi, like even if you're playing Fallen and Virtuous, I think you still need to side a card like Pankratops or Fenrir just to like make sure you have outs of those like continuous floodgates or Retaliating Seas.
It cannot die.
Sorry?
It cannot out die because the monster has to be sent to the graveyard for cost.
I just said that wrong.
Oh, you said that? Oh, you said, oh, okay, my bad.
I said it doesn't out DeFi or Retaliate.
It does not out them, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So after my being rudely interrupted after I let them speak for 5 minutes, it's all good. So yeah, I think it does have its place. Like if you are doing more robust branded combos on your turn, committing more of the extra deck to it, I think that's solid. Like I think it makes sense to include at least as like a 1 or a 2 of. That card, that slot is usually kind of up in the air anyways. It's usually like meows or like bells for the mirror. Like it's not really like a set in stone slot. And if there was like a guarantee, like I've also seen like more towards Anaheim format that was more super polys, just because that also outs Herald. So all of those have their own inherent issues of either not adding Herald or not being a monster card or just like only being mid in some matchups. So I think the deck has some room to grow, but at the same time, one of the big issues I have with Draco Tail is like inherently is it's really difficult to pair up with other engines. Like you're relatively capped in terms of deck building just due to like needing to play with monsters, being locked into fusion summons pretty quickly off of Rahu, etc. And then also, I forgot the other one, but yeah, that's the part like it's like the deck building restriction of like primarily needing monsters in your deck. So I think that's difficult to fix because like you can't like let's say Dark Ruler was like a staple 3 of in every main deck. It obviously I don't feel it is that way, but like if it is like you just don't have the luxury of playing that card in your deck at 3 just because, or if you do, or you're making major concessions in deck building. And I think that is just an inherent flaw. I do think it is probably the best engine deck going second right now. Just like the value you get off of Ketsu, how strong Rahu is. Like if Herald of the Arclight is banned, I think Draco Tail would just be like an instant best deck. Maybe like top 2 deck almost guaranteed. I think it's already probably like top 3 right now, like got locked, but like I think it may just be the best deck if there's no Herald in the format. But that card like really warps how the deck wants to play, and I think it's a pretty big problem that there aren't guaranteed / like consistent answers for. So that does, I think, cap its potential at like being locked and loaded as just like the best deck.
So why did a card like Tanker Top spawn in the format? Because, for example, I think the most comparable comparison with the Quick Play spell would just be the Undersword Pankratops, except the Undersword Pankratops is obviously like locked for going second. So why did a card like that fall out of the format and now a card like this is like rising in the format, even though you are kind of going against the grain when it comes to deck building with Draco Tail and introducing spell cards?
I think people were making mistakes by not playing it initially. They also all swapped to Fenrir, which accomplished a similar goal. Fenrir is a little more flexible in terms of going first because it outs Retaliating Sea. But going second Pankratops, I think it's like noticeably better. It just like it's way more flexible. It also applies pressure onto like spheres in the mirror match. I don't think Fenrir's a bad card. I think like they both have some of their uses, but Pankratops is a card that I have included in my side deck in that deck for a very long time because of those reasons. So, but yeah, I agree. Like it seems silly to be like I think the primary reason is just like to herald out. Like people are aware of how oppressive that card is into your deck. So ideally, that last slot is like a quote unquote guaranteed herald out, in which that card is, but it does kind of fall short in some of the other applications you would like that non-engine slot to have. Like if you play a mirror match, like obviously it's okay because it works like double cyclone, but you're definitely still losing value. Sorry, what were you saying, Logan?
I was just gonna say one thing I've been seeing on like Twitter and from some of the better Draco Tail players and people who've been topping recently is that they're big haters of Fenrir. They're like really advocating against it. I'm not really certain why. I haven't seen a great explanation. In my testing, there's definitely been some games where like they summon Fenrir, I resolve Retaliating Sea, and it just doesn't really do enough because the Retaliating Sea still trades fairly well.
Yeah.
And then like the Fenrir on the next turn is like pretty weak into like Mitsurugi cards. So I guess that would be the argument there. I don't know if there's something else I'm missing. But if you're not playing Fenrir, what are you playing instead to out the Red Sea?
So Vex and YGO, who is Lindridity, he did a video effectively just like laying that out. And he's like, yeah, like he advocated for cards like Dragon's Mind or just like even though like just like cards that are in generally just like better, like his argument was, like you said, Retaliating Sea being a macro for the spells, even if you remove it, it still kind of did its job and traded well. And then again, like you said, like if they just like go summon Murakuma on you, like what is this Fenrir doing? It just like got wiped. So I agree that there definitely are concerns with the card. I don't think it fixes like a lot of inherent issues the deck has. And his argument was like said Dragon's Mind, just like cards that like when you got to play actually provided value. Like if people are like holding Bell Ash Purge for your turn, having a card that counters that is more valuable than something like Fenrir. But yeah, like I said, like I think you need to be playing probably one of Fenrir Pank or Fallen Virtuous, especially if we see Malice. Like this kind of segues us into regional reports. Malice has been a top 3, if not 4, performing deck over the past 3 or 4 weeks. Logan and like Triff and us like all kind of pointed that out when we had him on a couple weeks ago, and just showing like how well positioned the deck was in terms of not losing to Droll and not losing to Barrier. So we'll go pull up like 1 or 2 of those lists, but I'm still kind of surprised to see how much representation it still has. It may just be like Dominus Impulse, good card, this is the best Impulse deck. That may just be like the argument for it. Because I didn't think the deck was that impressive. I thought like it still had some pretty obvious consistency issues, but it is obviously still performing. So I'm either missing something or it's just like represented to a point of saturation to where it has to top sometimes.
It also recently just won YCS Japan over in the
Yep.
OCG, and they also have like not the same. Obviously, their ban list for Malice is much more looser than ours, but they also have Dormouse to one, and they also have similar like high performing decks, similar to our own format. But Malice was able to like take it down. But I guess Malice is also just like much more difficult to deal with in like a best of one format.
Yeah, I mean, like as we heard people talk about the DC Cup, like it was one of the least enjoyable experiences ever, and I assume that's why. Like you're either manning Lancia or you're not playing against Malice, and both those situations are pretty difficult to handle.
Yeah. For me, I think the reason why Malice is doing well is if you could just like lay out what non-engine you want to play ideally in a deck. I think Malice plays like almost all of it. It plays Dominus Impulse, Super Poly, Bestials, and then all of the stuff that everybody else is already playing, Fua Ash, Imperm, Droll, stuff like that. And I think it just does it like pretty seamlessly. The fact that Bestials are engine and non-engine, I've talked about this a million times before, but I think the deck just like has the best non-engine in the game, has a ton of it, has a good amount of starters, and it's also just benefiting from the non-engine people are playing. Although now I'm starting to see like a lot of Draco Tail decks starting to side Lancia, and I think Meows is in the format more. I think Nib is coming back in the format. I think Bell is going to be in the format a lot. So I think Malice is going to be one of those decks is going to have pockets of success. And I think the pocket has just like passed. I think it was like the last couple of weeks, and now going forward, I think it'll probably taper off a little bit.
Do you expect people to side for Malice at Pittsburgh this weekend?
I do.
I think based off of the
I
past
do.
few weeks, it'd be like negligence not to.
Yeah,
Like before, I wouldn't have, but after this, I'd be like, yeah, you probably need to respect it a little bit.
in the last 2 days, I think I've had like 6 or 7 conversations with different players asking like if they should be citing Lancia or not. And I've even seen people who are already citing Lancia and asking if they should be citing more for the deck, like Chaos Hunter, Meows, Nibiru, stuff like that. It's like I think it's getting to a point where the people who have lost to the deck are like now going to overcompensate to actually beat the deck. So I definitely think that Malice is going to start fading away again.
It also, I think, helps the case for Malice that a lot of the people, again, are still playing like breakers and floodgate hand traps rather than like actual hand traps. So
Yep.
even though you have like a limited engine count, I feel like your starters are now more. It's a bit more rare for like your starters to get interacted with, right? Whether it be like Gold Sark, Allure, Dormouse, anything like that. Just because like cards like Veilers and Imperms are not like particularly dominant within the format.
Yeah, I agree. So we'll skim over this. This is Ivan Compos's sheet. Was gonna go over this and then go into YJ Pro decks, some other deck lists that they have pulled up. So Yummy, this is Yummy variants. Unfortunately, I don't know if there is a way to distinguish it between what that all entails. I assume Yummy Mitsu is just gonna be the most, and this is a pure Mitsu down here at 7. I think at my regional it was 2 pure Yummy and then no pure Mitsu Yummy, but I don't know what that looks like in this breakdown. If I had to guess, it's probably 75-25 Mitsu Yummy versus pure Yummy in terms of representation. Draco Tail in that situation becomes the most represented like pure deck, or just like easily identifiable archetype. And then unknowns, and we got Malice, Pure Mitsu, Crystron, Rizel, VS coming a little bit back. Doesn't surprise me too much. Like I said, Holy Suit's a good card. If you see Malice coming back, like obviously VS got hit as well, but you can probably compensate your way through it a little bit. And then Branded, which honestly is a lot lower than I expected. It looks like it's around the 1% range, so like 3 or less. And just due to like accessibility and it being kind of a fan favorite, I kind of expect it to be a little higher, but I think that does kind of prove the point that it's not probably as good as people may have hoped it to be.
For now.
And Orchestra B and White Forest. What were you saying?
I was just saying for now.
For now. We'll see what happens moving forward. I think the deck has good tools, but I don't think it's oppressive or anything. Like what does it do that's special compared to any other decks? And I can't really identify that outside of like Edo Lock, but like people are playing like Battle and Drop and stuff now, so
It also has
more respected.
It also has poor Draco Tail and Malice matchups.
Which is whatever, like 40% of the meta, 50% of the meta, depending on plays based off of top cut representation.
I think that RB deck is low-key a sleeper. I've played against that deck a few times now, and every time it seems like it's almost good enough. I think yeah, like one more wave of support or a ban list or something. That's definitely a deck to watch out for.
You know, the
Starting
average
to pop up here and there.
Yeah, a friend of mine was playing it, and like the boards he put up was just absolutely absurd. I haven't seen it go second, and I think that's probably the issue with it. But
That is
like that deck was doing the spell cancer stuff before Crystron, just because like why not? Like you should end on spell cancer for fun, and I think that deck results Clifford Genius like at least 2 times, if not more, which is just such an absurd interaction. So yeah, it'll pop up at some point, hopefully, especially if it gets like 1 or 2 more playable cards in First Protocol. So we'll see what happens there. But this is German Open. No, this is the Sunday German Regional. And this is the winning Malice list by Dave. I think this guy's a Vanguard player. I think I saw his Twitter where he like was like a Vanguard World Champion back in 22. So he's bringing his talents to South Beach. And pretty maximized Malice Engine, 3 Chessie, 3 March Hare, and then non-engines maxing out on Bishos, 3 Boldrake, Druis, Mag, and then Bell in the main, Ash Fua, 3 Imperm, 3 Impulse, MTP, GWC, no, TB11. I guess his justification for that is I'm playing 5 Bishos, so I'm going to often draw Malice plus Extender. I think it's still a little risky, but I definitely understand like wanting GWC in your deck.
I actually saw him comment on this why he didn't play TB. He said that the hands where you open like just Rabbit and 4 non-engine, he said he was just basically just using Rabbit as a resource loop with GWC and MTP to set up for the next turn, and just accepting that like his 1 card combo isn't going to combo, it's just going to set up for next turn, which I guess is kind of fair. This deck doesn't really play too many bricks. You're going to have non-engine to back up your follow-up.
I guess, but like
I guess when you look at like the construction of his deck, it's like the only combination of cards that doesn't extend outside of drawing more traps or Malice in the mirror is like Ash, Fua, Bell, Impulse, Imperm. So like outside of drawing duplicates, if anything, like you're probably gonna be okay.
Yeah.
It still seems a bit sus because I think TB11's like a solid extender. I assume GBC's like a little bit better, but being able to like set like obviously niche example, but like being able to draw and set TB11 and it be live instantly compared to GBC, I think it gives it a little bit more viability. But I haven't tested this deck too much in the past couple months, so he obviously has success with it. I'm gonna defer to him, but I've definitely seen TB11 be pretty standard, and I think it's actually the exception to not be played than the inverse.
Yep.
I was gonna say, I wonder what the consistency on this is. Just because I'm looking at the main deck and it's only 10 1-card starters. Obviously, the 2-card starter math improves it a lot as well. But I think it's also like not playing cards like Allure as well lowers your consistency. So I wonder, how often this player actually just didn't have a play.
So the math on that is actually so if you play TB11 and no Allure, just what's in the deck right here plus TB11, it gets to around 93%, counting like all the 2-card combinations. Our math was including Bestials at 4. He has it at 5, which will slightly increase it, but not by like a whole lot. But yeah, it's around like 92.5, 93-ish% to play. Yeah, which is not bad.
And especially when people, like we said, are cutting down on imperms. Bell, I think, is still relatively prominent, but like not as prominent as it has been. That's definitely just like a lot of the time your combos are resolving and it's taking advantage of. You can get food and give them whatever 2 or 3 draws, but you're setting up whatever 4 layers that are difficult to kind of play around. So this deck is obviously still very strong. And then you
also has access to some of the best side cards. I was just saying it has access to really good side cards.
Exactly, I was going to say that. And then you can decide into 7 macros and call by the grave to check it, and then nibs for whatever mirror, and then you obviously get to play Droll as well. I'm actually interested why he didn't main Droll. That seems to be kind of opposite of what I've seen in this deck as well. So I guess I don't know if I have a great answer for that. Like if Mitsuyami plays, I don't see how this deck wins consistently. I guess the Bishos are a little better than some people may have anticipated, because these were cards that I was like, oh, like they're just gonna like wipe your board or whatever. But maybe like the deck plays, because it's a lower Mitsu count, it's a little more fragile. So between 5 Bishos and Impulses, it's pretty easy to like cut them off of the board wipe consistently.
My guess for why he didn't play Droll is because the Bestials deal with the Mitsu engine like fairly effectively, and your deck loses to the Yummy engine already. So like if you're using a card like Droll to stop them from Mitsu and they get to Yummy, you're probably just going to lose. So I think you need to like just try to pair the hand traps to completely stop them. And I don't think like Droll kind of pairs, but it's pretty difficult to stop the actual Yummy cards, especially like a Cupsy. So
Yeah.
that would be my only guess here.
Yeah, I guess Bestial plus whatever, like Bestial clears Murakumo, and then no one's playing a Kroki, right? So that Bestial is, especially if you are able to banish the Murakumo, like that body sticks, it applies some pressure to a Synchro that's currently on board, so maybe it does a bit that way. Because that's like something to take note of, because like Bestials are cards that I generally like playing. And I had historically at least cut them because I didn't feel like they were as oppressive into like pure Yummy. But if like the Mitsu Yummy deck now is at a point where a well-timed Bestial is really impactful on the Mitsu engine, then maybe these are worth looking at again. So definitely something to take note of. This deck seemed to perform very well and seems pretty clean. Like there's no like clunk that I'm noticing, and you obviously get to play a lot of very impressive cards in your list, so that's a big selling point for it as well. Yes, congratulations to Dave. This is Danilo. He has a YouTube channel. If I remember to link it, I will. I think maybe I know he has Twitter. Where he's relatively active. So this is where we see the 3 Fallen the Virtuous, which we saw Rahan mentioning earlier. 2 Pan, 2 Urgula. Main deck non-engine is Fua, Droll, Ash, 3 Nib. Maxing out. So I think 3 Trapped is like pretty normal at this point. If people find like this is like kind of required just to make your end board layered enough to guarantee. And then obviously like if you get Asher Belt on 1, having 2 more to resolve still is important. Extra deck, like we've been noticing, way more branded focused. Arthalion, Glomel, Philly Regis, Secretarian, no Mysterion, and then Chaos Star Source, 1 Albion, Mirror Jade, Sanctifier, Lubellion, Searing Dragon, and then he plays Dragon that Devours a Dogma, which I guess is just an Albaz target. You can obviously add the quick play spell of it, right? But
Yeah,
doesn't seem
it's also,
like
it's an alpha target because it's really good into like the Mitsu Yummy and the Yummy decks. Because you both do 2 cards on their field and you can just like shuffle back 2 for the graveyard. So that's like an insane power play.
Yeah, if you're able to get the result for sure. I think my argument against that would be like Dark Lord gets more value against your deck, but obviously you have Flame. It just seems like it's probably just fine. I don't know. I just always look at that type of stuff. And then play Rinbrum Striking Dragon, which just another way to access Albaz, so more consistently going to be able to resolve the Dragon that Devours the Dogma effect. And then Titanic Clad, another way to get Albaz on board. And then 1 SP, no Spheres, no Spear of the Dragon, or Spear with Eyes of Blue. I think I've seen that a little bit more. We'll look at a details list from this weekend as well, and I think he played 4 like monsters, so I think that number is definitely fluctuating depending on how many branded monsters you want to play. And then his side deck is just 15 monsters, all hand traps for the most part. I know he's only played 2 Droll in the main, but so it's a 3rd Droll, 2 Valor, 3 Bell, I assume this is mostly for the mirror, then 5 Chummies, 2 Perulia, and 3 Meows, 2 Cartesia, and then 1 Mag, 1 Saronir, I assume just for branded decks, and maybe the Mitsu Yummy matchup. Logan, I assume this looks relatively similar to stuff you've been looking at, just based off of our conversations.
Yeah, this is what I've been seeing going around. This isn't exactly what I'm playing, like what I've been testing. Obviously, I've been between 1 and 2 of the quick play and 0, but yeah, this is pretty standard. I do think Droll should be a 3 of though.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think like 3rd Fallen Virtuous for Droll is like an easy swap just on its own. I'm curious. So I've seen Cartesia kind of falling out of favor, which seems insane to me considering I see Retaliating Sea in like a lot of side decks that I don't even expect it to be too good in. Like when I see it in like pure Yummy, I'm like, that seems kind of questionable. I can't think of other decks at the moment, but like Retaliating Sea is being put into a lot of decks that it doesn't really have synergy with, and it just like, this card's good against Draco Tail, they're probably gonna out it for me anyway, so it's not too big of a conflict. But if Draco Tail is able to just like kind of lock you under your own Retaliating Sea off of like setting a horn, off of like Cartesia, like where you just like still resolve your effects, I think that's like a pretty concerning thing that can happen to a lot of those decks that are just like throwing your Retaliating Sea and assuming that it gets added for them.
Yeah. I think another example of decks that are throwing Retaliating Sea in is actually just the Draco Tail deck. Like they're putting it in their side deck, and it's pretty awkward for them to actually deal with.
Are they? Because like it feels so weird to play Retaliating Sea like if you're the Draco Tail player, because then you have to out your own cards, and sometimes it becomes out like awkward to actually out it. So I know a lot of people tried that for Anaheim and then quickly got off it.
I think more people are playing Draco Tail now, like just due to sheer numbers and losing whatever deck they were playing before, and seeing Barrier out of the format. I think makes people want to try it out more. So this is people probably trying to like rediscover what other people have like kind of discarded. But also the Draco Tail mirror is significantly more prominent than it was in Anaheim. Like I played 2 in Swiss. I'd expect if I was playing the deck to play something maybe 4 or 5 in 14 rounds, like if not more, depending on how well the deck does over the course of the tournament. So I think you do have to have a consistent winning strategy in a mirror match. And if let's say you're a little bit newer to the deck, maybe trying to blow out people with Vitality is like your game plan if you don't think you're going to be able to skill check them or just like outplay them. So I think it has its uses, but like for Logan, like I'm generally very opposed to putting cards in my deck that restrict myself from playing the game, even if it does something that affects my opponent in a meaningful way. This is Rico. I'm not going to try and pronounce his last name. This guy or gentleman, top 16s Sao Paulo with this deck as well, so he's been playing it for a while. If I remember correctly, this list may be card for card. I know he's playing Super Poly. I think Shifter was also in his deck. I know he played Allure. I don't remember like all the non-engine, but looks very similar. Same extra deck cards that I remember. And then yeah, the side deck looks very similar as well. Side decking only 2 Ash, which I think is kind of a surprise. This deck looks like it may struggle in the Draco Tail. I guess Super Poly helps check it a little bit, but the first thought that I have looking at this side deck is that this list is probably a little weak in the Draco Tail. I'm not sure if either of you feel the same way.
Yeah, I think this is definitely a list that's built to beat Mitsuyami.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, like all the best shields and Super Polys. Yeah, like I don't hate the Super Poly in the deck. I think it like has some uses. I think the Malice extra deck is like a lot of utility cards in slots like whatever 10 through 15 or like 11 through 15. So you have some flexibility there, but I'd be a little concerned if I was paired against like 4 Draco Tail in a row over the course of a tournament at Pittsburgh. I think that's a matchup that you have to play perfectly in. Like I think it's already a little bit questionable. Like that deck I think can actually kind of like interact with your board reasonably well. Like Arthaline threatening to bounce your links and get them out of rotation I think is really relevant. So we'll kind of see how that Malice versus Draco Tail interaction plays out at Pittsburgh. My expectation is that it is Draco Tail favorite. But maybe a card like Impulse just like kind of ships it in the favor of Malice. I recognize Ryan Fletcher. I think he used to like grind the Yummy deck. Who's this? Oh, this is the Snake Eye Malice deck that I saw posted. This, I'm not sure. Did you all see the combo for this? It is actually hilarious.
I think you use like Link Rebo and Link Garibo and then Cyber's Wicked to like go into Malice engine.
Yeah, so you go, if I remember correctly, Snake Eye Ash into Poplar, Almirage, Link Karibo, make Wicked, and then use. Does he play? I don't remember exactly how he did it, but like there was a way to summon a monster to Wicked, add backup Adagnister. It may have been like Flamber Jacket, I don't remember exactly, but like you make Wicked, search backup Adagnister, you now like summon the backup Adagnister, synchro it off with a level 1, make Herald the Arclight, and then I think that's what it was, right? And then you like, I remember like banishing Dormouse off of the backup ad when Herald in the field. I don't remember the exact line. Like,
oh, I think I understand what the line is. I think you start with Snake Eye Ash, go into Poplar, which that's Field Spell, which plays another monster. Then you link both into like Almirage and Link Karibo respectively. Poplar goes back in Spell and Trap Card Zone. You contact fuse both of them into
Flamer Dragon, that's what it was. Yeah,
that's how you get it. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Sega Flamer Dragon. That's how you triggered that, and then yeah. I know I was forgetting one step, which is that's the important. That's how you trigger the Wicked. And then yeah, it is hilarious.
Cool.
I feel like that's so how like seems normal summon heavy. Yeah.
No, well, not normal summon heavy, but also like really weak into both Fua and Droll. Droll being both popular right now and a card that normally like Malice doesn't lose to. So like I understand like you like include more starters, but it also just feels like you're playing a worse off deck.
Yeah, so like compare this. Do I have another? So 3, 6, 9, 12. You do get to play Impulse, which I think is a selling point for it. 15, 16, 17. So we'll say 17 engine here. And then 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 16, 17, 20. So yeah, you're definitely sacrificing some non-engine slots to play this. I feel like I'd only play one Poplar too. The Flamber Dragon as well. Like I think the idea is neat. Probably not the time or the place for it in terms of just like how the non-engine trends have shifted. Because also like Herald of the Arclight doesn't beat Nib or whatever because like you can't get Nib by that point. I think it's really cool, like watching these decks pop up and like have interesting bridges is neat. But personally, I don't think it's super competitively viable, like for a bigger tournament or just like over the cross of multiple tournaments.
I agree.
You ready? We can kind of skim through the last few. I actually forgot to be doing this. So the last breakdown, sorry, was 3 Malice, 2 Draco Tail, Yummy, Ryzeal, and Mitsuyami. For Louisville, this was approximately 300 people, 2 Yummy, 3 Draco Tail, 1 Mitsuyami, and 1 RB, and then 1 unknown. 100 branch on Yummy won it. I'm just like skimming through it here. Seems pretty normal. This list was Sunny Lancia. We see evenly matched on the side. Also, Gravekeeper's Inscription, which is a card that I've heard talked about. I haven't seen it pop up too much. I expect we'll see a decent amount of it at day 2 at Pittsburgh. The card just has a lot of applications across the board against all the good decks. Yeah, nothing, I think, crazy abnormal in terms of deck building. Anti-Spell is also a card that got activated on me multiple different times over the weekend. And I expect to also just like see a lot of top decks just because of how flexible it is against everything.
I've also heard of,
sorry,
I was gonna say I've also heard of like the solemn cards gaining popularity as well. Both Judgment and Warning, and I've heard like multiple people say that they've encountered those cards post that as well.
Yeah, I mean when people are maining 3 Fua, 3 Dark World, and even potentially some people are maining Meows as well, that's 9 going first cards, and obviously you want to put in some engines, some hand traps, but like having some strong going first cards that. And I feel like I've seen Storm fall out of favor maybe a little bit. I'm not sure like it's like to an extreme extent, but like it's definitely feels less good than it has been in the past. So you can definitely take advantage of not having like Judgment being at 1 and like just still being able to resolve your good trap cards. So this was the German Open, if I remember correctly. Yes. So 700 duelists. This is the biggest tournament of the weekend. 3 Mitsuyami, 2 Malice, and 3 Draco Tail. Philip, Whitinger. I think I'm very well. I'm sorry.
Whitinger.
He just posted his list on YouTube if you want to go check him out. He is, I think it's just his name, TCG. So I don't have his list pulled up. I have one of the Malice decks from this, Gabriel Hort. And then this was the list that we skimmed earlier. So 2 Allure. I think Allure is probably necessary. Logan, you said you mentioned the math a little bit. Like, did you feel like how relevant was this card when you did the math on the deck?
It doesn't actually help the math as much as you would think it does. Because a lot of the times what happens is you have Allure and you're just comboing already for the allure to be live. The only situations where like Allure actually gets you to combo is when you specifically open like Marcher or Chessy Cat by itself, and then you actually draw into a way to extend. The other thing I don't like about Allure is in this deck you go through your name so quickly, your effects, and Allure just is another card that goes through your Malice name instantly. And actually being able to generate multiple bodies isn't as easy as it seems anymore without Splash Mage. So I'm not the biggest fan of Allure. I was actually playing this deck with Allure sided and just having it when I go first to try to draw into non-engine and also somewhat of a consistency boost. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that card. I kind of like AI Meet You a little bit more in this deck, but I can understand the appeal of Allure.
Yeah, especially if there's no Lance in the format, like you get to take advantage of just seeing 2 more cards in your deck. So yeah, I think that's good points. I will say, like you mentioned, struggling getting bodies on board. Allure, even though it uses an effect, like sometimes just getting those first 3 bodies on board is a bit of a difficulty. So
yeah,
there's definitely I think arguments for it. But I definitely like had my opponent activate 3 Allure and just like still lose the game. So like even seeing 6 cards isn't enough sometimes. So
I also like it in his list more that has Poly and Droplet.
Yeah, you have a lot of good cards to draw into off of it. Yeah, makes sense. So yeah, I think if you're gonna play with this card in your deck, probably deck building around it makes more sense. And so it only has 8, I guess 10 hand traps if you count the Bestials on top of Impulse, and then which are all cards that in general you can like draw into on your opponent's turn, have some form of value. Like you can even debut Mitsuyami on their turn sometimes. So yeah, and then just like the additional hand traps for the situations where you need to take out these and be more proactive in terms of an engine. So yes, the last one we're gonna go over is the regional I was at this past weekend. It was only like 145 people. I don't know what the hell happened. Regional got a lot smaller. So shout out to DTA for winning it. Played Draco Tail, and then I got 5th with Christian. We'll just skim over our list real quick. His was a little bit different than what I had seen. I think main deck was like pretty standard, and then extra deck probably pretty normal. Like this is what I would anticipate most Draco Tail lists from like let's say last week looking like without the innovation of the branded. And then he played Lava Golem, which he said was awful. I think I agree. Your deck is very normal stone reliant. Not something I would like to play personally. Rivalry, which I think he also said was bad. I don't know. I don't really see a big reason for it. I guess it's just for Mitsuyami, but I don't know. I feel like going first against that deck, you're pretty favored already. It seems kind of unnecessary. And then
Yeah, I
the
prefer
Chungies,
to
which I've
do
been seeing a lot more rise in popularity of, like specifically Perulia. Meows we've already seen in and out, but I've seen Perulia rising in popularity, which I'm kind of surprised about. Can't think of too many matchups where it's just like very good outside of like maybe Canine decks, which seem to be a smaller percentage of the meta. Is there a reason they all see either this card coming up in popularity?
It's also good against like pure yummy as well. You hold them off like special summons from hand, which I think limits their board as well and forces them into like awkward plays.
Yeah,
I
Purley
think
was a card
flooding-
that. Sorry, go
You're
ahead.
good. No, you're good.
I was gonna say Purley was a card that we started liking more than Meows in our testing. Uh, I think when you just activate one or the other by itself, I think Meows is better on its own. But I think Perulia paired with other stuff, especially like Nib, I think is just really powerful against the Mitsuyami deck.
Sorry.
It also pairs better with Droll too because you just get the draw immediately, and it still gives you the option to Droll. You can just like replace the Charmy and then still Droll them.
That's fair. Yeah, I can't even think of what I was going to say in terms of that. I've still liked Meows. But yeah, I there definitely are, like, if you try to Meows a minion, they can just like chain surprise to cut off a draw. So I think it is not as good. Oh, I was gonna say flood hand trapping pure yummy always felt kind of lackluster to me because that deck can generally just like trade 1-for-1, sometimes even give you 0 draws depending on how their hand is positioned. And then like they're just gonna sit on half board plus a lot on engine. So unless you actually have a way to interact with the Snatchy on your turn, they can kind of just like do all of the plays that they would have on their turn anyway. So it felt like a pretty lackluster trade. But again, maybe just another card that mitigates how often they get to Herald, so it may just like be good for that reason alone.
Yeah, I
And
agree
we
with
see
that.
Fender over Pengertops again, so no Brandon the Virtuous. So I guess we'll kind of see how that plays out in Pittsburgh. Which one is ranked supreme in terms of the options of removal? And this is my Crystron Canine deck. I did not play Spell Canceller, so shout out me for being an honest duelist. Yeah, seems pretty normal. 3 Noroi, 3 Dark Ruler, Droll, Ash Fua. Even without the Spell Canceller, like I played Silhouette Rabbit to be Dark Ruler. I played Durandal just so I can Durandal draw a lot of people. Like I wasn't trying to play for Yu-Gi-Oh with this deck. It was still really going first oriented, and then just a bunch of hand traps inside deck for beating everything. After playing this weekend, like Storm didn't feel as good as I was hoping. It's a card that I'll probably end up cutting moving forward.
So, question:
Yes.
Why did you play this?
I almost took this deck to Anaheim, and I think the deck. I don't know why I really like the way the canine cards are kind of positioned right now. I'm also a humongous fan of Force Release. It just like has a lot of utility. And going second applies a lot of pressure. Like Jax does a lot into boards, and also like whenever you go Jax, play a guy on top of it, it just like 66 damage twice. So you don't have to play like actual grind games of this tech. So the main reason is I almost took this deck to Anaheim. I didn't. I swapped the Draco Tail last minute, and I kind of regretted it. Even though I ended up performing reasonably, I got like 50th. I was disappointed in my process of like testing this deck for 3 weeks or like 2 weeks, whatever it was, and then just swapping last minute because I thought it was the incorrect choice. I should have stuck with what I knew, and because I was gonna play that deck better than I did Draco Tail, even if it was like a worse pick in terms of the meta. So I needed to play it just so like I had used all this prep for something. I got an idea of what it feels like in tournaments. And then I can now either play this deck for Pittsburgh or not. Most likely not. After having the experience I did of like Fua and just like how little agency you have in some of your games. But yeah, I still need to like not have the what if of like, oh, I think this deck's solid, but like not take it to 3 different tournaments in a row because of whatever reason. So I need to actually play a tournament with it before I made my decision for Pittsburgh.
Reasonable.
Yeah, I think it's not bad. Obviously, like you end on 6 negates or whatever. Like, no deck is beating your inboard if he resolves. But in terms of just like its position in the meta, like in terms of it being a canine deck, like you're kind of forced to commit into cards like Fua and Perulia and some of the other decks, like we'll say Vanquish Soul or whatever else. Like you're not as committed into. You can like kind of half board off like a card like Holy Sue, or if you're playing Mitsuyami, like you have a little bit more optionality in terms of how you're gonna play into the Chummies. In this deck, it's kind of all gas, no brakes, which is why I think Spell Cancer is kind of required. So like if you are all gassing, at least you're ending on like a flood that is difficult to out. So
Do you think for a deck like Draco Tail going into Pittsburgh, it's worth it for them to use a slot on the Mega Fleet for this deck?
No. I've never really thought that card was particularly good.
Yeah.
Just because it outs the spell canceller.
It can. Well, they can also just, like, end on cluster, right? So you have to have like two bodies that are big enough to crash into it or swing over it.
Well, I think you can just. Can you not fuse off the canceller? What does the Mega Fleet say?
I will pull up Forbidden website real quick.
One Cyber Dragon monster and one monster in the extra monster zone.
Yeah, so that one's extra.
Oh yeah,
monster.
Cyber
So
Dragon monster. Yeah,
one
so I guess you'd have to
and-
like attack over it. Yeah.
You could think in Chimera Tech, Mega.
Yeah, you're thinking of Fortress Dragon, which is specifically
Fortress
Cyber Dragon, and this
Mega,
one
Mega
is
Fleet,
Cyber
I
Dragon
guess,
monster.
still theoretically outs it, but not exactly.
Yeah, like if you're getting to that part of the board where you have Infinity on the board, you also have Cluster.
Yes.
So I don't
Yeah.
see it's
You know what
consistent up
outs
to
it
it.
now? You know what outs it? Lava Golem.
Lava Golem does that.
Aditya was actually prep for you.
He was. I would have smoked his ass, but sure. I'm not spell cancer, but I can need it. But yeah, like I will say the spell cancer aspect of this deck I think is really oppressive. Like when you look at a lot of the decks that we just saw, even when you look at like Malice, like if you just have a spell cancel on your board and like 1.5 interactions, like a pop and like a Regulus negate, just for example, like I don't think many decks are able to beat that. Like you negate Marshmallow Yummy and then you pop the normal summon. Like what deck is playing through that? Mitsuyumi, like Mitsurugi isn't doing anything. Malice isn't really extending through that. Like I think when this deck goes first interacted with, it's really difficult. Even if you chummy it, like you have to have a way to check Durandal if they have open draw, which is frustrating. This deck is not designed to play for Yu-Gi-Oh, so. But like inherently, the cards in the deck are fine. It is just like combinations of like Durandal, Idrol, or Spell Canceller. It's like I don't think anything Crystron Cannon inherently does is a problem, but like the combination of like River protecting it and being able to lock your opponent out of the deck is I think where the issues arise. So
I guess
expect to see have some success at the event, but nothing that I think you can like. If I show up at the tournament, there's no guarantee that I top 32 with the deck. I think it's just like a little too much variance in terms of its playstyle for it to be consistently good.
One of the questions I had was what were your thoughts on Izuna as a hand trap this weekend?
I liked it. I didn't feel like Nash Knight was actually particularly too good in terms of what it did. But being able to Valon and then like go into Zeus, which is a card that I hadn't played in the deck historically, but I think is gaining a little bit more viability. You can also do things like play Typhon, where Lupus can go into Typhon and check Murakumo. So I think it has a lot of utility. I do think it does require 3 to 4 extra deck slots to be good. At a minimum, I think Valon, and then probably Zeus, and then either a Ripper or a Durandal or a Vomana. Like, I think it's 3 or 4 slots. And like, if you're playing a Draco Tail deck, I don't know if you can fit Branded and Canine and Draco Tail. I think it's just a lot of extra commitment. So I think it has utility, but I think the Izuna also needs to be paired. It needs to either Fua them or Droll them or something that just like makes their board less powerful. That way Izuna checks what's left. But I will say Izuna into Draco Tail I think is really oppressive, depending on how committed they are to the end board or if they're ending on Mirror Jade. If they just do like Draco Tail stuff with like an Albion engrave, you can just like set up an untargetable Valon, enter battle, and then Zeus them, and even if they get some value off of the draws, like you're clearing all of their follow-up and all of their guys, and they just have like a 5 minute playthrough. So I think it definitely has some utility in decks that can facilitate it. Alrighty, boys. About an hour in, I think. Any final thoughts,
Yep.
Guru and or Branded enthusiast?
I think Brandon's gonna win this weekend, and I've been saying that for the past like couple of months. So eventually, I will be right.
Yeah, my final thoughts would just be I hope the next time we're on this pod that one of us is a YCS champion.
Alright, just mirror match.
Are you going to
Back
Pittsburgh?
from Anaheim.
You're going to Pittsburgh, right, Aaron?
Yeah, I booked last week.
Okay.
I am not going to Pittsburgh, so it will not be me.
Alright,
will
so
not be the
Brandon is
YCS
probably not
champion.
winning the event unless I guess Pac shows up with it and just cooks everybody.
But
I can see that.
I am back in competitive Yu-Gi-Oh in 2026, and that is when Burst Protocol arrives. So coincidence? I think not.
So you're playing
Huge
Rockets,
news.
is what I'm hearing. Alrighty, boys. It was a pleasure. I will see Logan in Pittsburgh. We had mentioned maybe doing something on the Friday. I'm not sure if it's gonna work out, but if we do, we'll post on Twitter and see if we can get some people
Yeah, we'll
involved
see.
and maybe do like a short pod the day of. But if you would like that, let us know in the comments. Any thoughts about Pittsburgh? What deck you think is gonna win the event? Otherwise, thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.